This is the Board Policy Committee meeting for January 17th, 2017. Has meeting been properly posted, Lynn?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Barbara is not with us tonight. She's excused. We have no citizens that I see out there to speak with us, so we will bypass that item. We do have discussion and action to deal with tonight. Excuse me. The action item is simply the minutes from our December meeting. Reaching for them. There we go. December 20th. Is there any questions on it or motion for approval of the minutes? Joel moves for approval of the minutes. Amanda? Okay, thank you. Any questions, any changes required? If not, Greg, yes.
Joe, can you just clarify administrative guidelines, what that means? I mean, I assume it means how administrators implement the policy.
Right.
But that's just,
yeah,
I mean, that's
so-
my understanding, but.
Yeah, so what the board will be discussing tonight are the policies. After the policies get approved by the board, then the administration will work on how those policies will be administered. So those, we've kind of jokingly called them Todd's rules
Right.
In the district.
Okay.
And we will have access to those as well.
Correct.
Okay, anything else? All in favor of approving the minutes from December 20th, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 4-0, Lynn. Mhm. And we have, under the next two items under here, we have the information items and policy action items. I mentioned to Joe earlier, I thought maybe we would flip-flop the 3 and 2 to review the Neola policy approval process, because really the other item is part of that process. So, Joe, would you want to give us the Reader's Digest version of?
Yeah, so I just, as we, and I by no means don't want to say wrap up the workaround, but with the initial policy work, a few months back in December, the board approved a pathway towards approval, and part of that pathway was a review of the work that we've done on this. And so I included a copy of that pathway in the packet, just for reference, questions if those questions need to be asked. In looking back on this process, we first brought the idea of Neola to committee, I believe it was February of 16. First time it was discussed, it came up right after the education convention that's occurring this week. So almost a year ago to the week, we began this discussion administratively. Should we bring it to the board? We brought it to the board in February for a committee for a first kick around. And then that teed up the work for us over the next couple of months. We began our intensive work in June with administrators and administrative assistants and board and committee members working in work sessions, June, July, and August. We have been to committee now, September, October, November, December, and January, with progress updates as well as actual discussion of the books that we have here. And so, in the January Policy Committee meeting, our next step then would be, the next step listed would be to bring this to the board in February for a final approval if the board wishes. So at that time then, we'll begin the process of getting these policies up to, up online for our community. There's going to be a little bit of a delay from approval to online publication, but we will have access to all of the policies that are in place. So our administrators will have access to them through Lynn. It's just going to take a little bit of time for the electronic publishing. So
Good. And if you will recall, we spent the last 2 months, December and November, approving half of them. So we had the first reading to the board on the first 4 sections. I got to get my month straight, in December.
Right.
And the first reading for the next 5 sections a week ago with the intention of having the second reading and therefore the action item on the February meeting. Got straight? Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so that was a review of the Neola policy process. Approval of the process was done some months ago. Now, flipping back to number 2, we want to have a go-around now on what else is in your mind on the whole set of policies. For your information, Karen, who joined us back there, has submitted a number of items that, as she went through the policies, Joe and I have gone over. Some of them were typos, some of those were punctuation, some of those were statutorial, is that the way you say it? And a few of them, we did make some corrections, and we have communicated back to Karen on those corrections. I had a list back in December that we took care of. So we want to now find out if there's anything in the committee's mind, and we can go back and check with Karen to see if anything, if she got all of our updates. So, committee, any things that's troubling you about what's in here? Greg,
Anything else? Anything else you mean, other than what
Yeah.
Karen's questions were?
Do you have something?
With what we have in front of us with policy 3112 and 4112, with section C, we changed section A to refer to performance evaluation. Under social interaction, we talk about performance evaluation. Any discussion with board members and staff? Performance of job duties or responsibilities or inappropriate violations. But in section A, we refer to that as performance evaluation of their job responsibilities.
Well, this section C deals with when we are gathered in some kind of a social atmosphere, like retirement dinner, yearly service gatherings, things like that. I don't think we'd ever get into performance discussions at something like that. I would kind of hope not, but. Other thoughts on that?
To me, it's just a fine line between staff communications to the board and social interaction. Just me. Sometimes those two.
Well,
Are one and the same. I guess my point
because
is.
it does say related performance of job duties at the bottom.
Right, but in section A, it talks about related to the performance evaluation of their job duties or responsibilities. So
I may just.
Go ahead,
point to
Joe.
the committee. In Garcetti versus Caballos, which was decided by the Supreme Court, and Samuelson versus LaPorte Community School District, which was decided in the Seventh Circuit Court, the language for this policy is taken out of these court decisions. And so there is a legal backing for what is written here and why it is written. And I think that does need to be taken into consideration if we're going to make any further alteration of this policy.
Okay. Live with that, Greg?
I guess I just see, in one section it says it's only related to the evaluation. In another section it relates to pretty much everything. It's defined as evaluation only in section A, but it's not defined as evaluation only in section C. I talk to teachers a lot about what they're doing in their classroom. Maybe an in-service that they've been to me that says in section C that they could be disciplined for that. And I thought we were looking at being disciplined only for talking about job performance related to their evaluation. Section A, it clearly designates performance evaluation, but it doesn't do that in Section C. Section C means anything. Anytime we interact with staff, you can't talk about job performance or job responsibilities. I know I do that all the time.
Well, the earlier part says you can informally discuss matters like educational trends, issues, innovations, general activities. Pretty wide open.
But then it seems to contradict itself at the bottom when it talks, I mean, because all those are job,
Well, they're saying that that part could get into heavy.
seems a little unclear to me.
I'm okay with it. Or Amanda? Go ahead.
I'm rereading for the fourth time.
Two?
It says you can discuss all those things, but at the bottom it says if you do that, all those are job duties or responsibilities. And at the bottom it says they're inappropriate violations of the chain of command.
It does say may result, it just gives the district the option of discipline until it's necessary.
Well, perhaps an example like last night's new teacher celebration, where members of the board were invited to have dinner with and talk about a survey. There was a lot of discussion in around how are things going. That forum would not at all require any sort of, or even flag any sort of concern about, what's being shared, what's being discussed. I mean, there's the district, the HR department actually set up a forum to do that. If there was something, though, that was talking about performance of job duties, not necessarily we're doing a reading unit in my third grade classroom, but I'm being told I'm not performing in a certain manner,
Right.
that there's a distinction there, and the term may provides the latitude to address it appropriately. That may be discipline is associated or may not. And a lot of that would go down to the discretion of the administration, school or at the district office.
Still reading it, Joe?
To me, the first part, Section 8 talks about performance evaluation.
Well, and that's what we put in.
Put in the word evaluation, but then it seems to me that would also fit then at the end, Section C, when it's performance evaluation.
Joe?
I've been clued in and been trying to study these words here in the middle after the word however. However, since individual board members have no special authority except when they are convened at a legal meeting of the board or vested special authority by board action. So we are in an informal setting here. I think they're just trying to point out that there really should not be reviewing performance in those scenarios. I mean, should be a private activity. That should be a one-on-one activity conducted in a room, not in front of a bunch of other people. So I can see.
So are you talking job responsibilities, Joe, or job performance?
Bottom half is about performance.
Performance to me is evaluation.
Well, as I continue on and I'm reading, I'm focused on job performance. I agree that job performance should not be something that we are discussing in public. Especially a board member coming up to a staff member and saying, hey, I want to talk to you about this right now. And that person, what do they say? Well, this is a board member. I'm not going to walk away.
I think I'd be fine with it if after performance it said evaluation. Performance evaluation of job duties.
Joe?
One thing to consider, and as a board, please step into this. I'm just trying to remember, some of the conversations that happened post-Act 10 when an employee, were to be subject to discipline or termination. They may appeal that decision to the board, correct? And just thinking about it as a matter of process. And if along the way that employee were talking to individual board members about their job duties, responsibilities, role, whatever it is, would that appeal then to the board somehow be compromised by having allowed that conversation in policy? And I think that that's where if we were to dig in and peel back lawsuits, the two court decisions that are listed here, I think we might be able to see some of that detail as to why this policy would be written as it is from the perspective of a court ruling. I mean, there are some policies that we have in here that have federal statute or federal law written in. There are some policies in here that have state statute written in. There are some policies that are grounded right in, something that's, Supreme Court. There's other policies in here that have Neola 2000 whatever stamped on the bottom of them. The policies that just list Neola are general guidelines, words from attorneys, but there's not been a court case that's really supported what's been written. It's just been kind of, this is best practice and this is how an attorney would have interpreted it. What we have here is something that's actually grounded in two court rulings that provide direction for this policy. Similarly, if we saw Wisconsin state statute or U.S. court or something along that lines.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
Just,
I was trying to read it over again. too.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and I can understand where you're coming from, Greg.
Right.
I'm comfortable with the wording, and in particular with the failure to do so may. That the word may gives us the latitude that we need to interpret that situation. And I think we should try to avoid the situation if possible, but sometimes just conversations lead in a direction, and then maybe you can stop that conversation right dead in its tracks as it's starting and say, hey, you know what, this isn't appropriate right now, and this is what you should be doing. And so there could be an unintentional raising of a topic that might not be appropriate. And that's what I like about the word may, is we can really look at that situation versus someone heavily lobbying, wanting to talk about this. I need to talk on this point right now to you, and this person hasn't. They're just full blazing guns ahead, and they're forcing it down your throat and everything. So I'm okay with the verbiage in black, and primarily because of the word may, we have some latitude there to really look at that situation.
Amanda, you're nodding too?
Yes, I do agree with the may. Greg, just clarify for me that last sentence there. What is it of concern, and what do you want it to add?
In section A, we related to performance evaluation.
Yes.
So if a teacher comes up to me or a staff member comes up to me and talks about their performance related to their evaluation, to me that's inappropriate. They're coming up and talking to me about a new reading program or one of their goals that they have for this year. To me, that's not inappropriate. I mean, I look at performance evaluation as totally different. To me, in section A, it clarifies it as evaluation, and in section C, it doesn't. Talks about at the top that expected social affairs, formally discuss matters of educational trends, issues, general activities. But at the bottom, I mean, and some of those to me are performance duties and responsibilities, those things listed at the top. My thing is that, you know, it's performance evaluation that should be inappropriate to talk to board members about, not just job duties and responsibilities. I mean, would that prohibit board members from having listening sessions? Because I know board members have had those in the past. Would this policy prohibit board members from having listening sessions?
I don't think it does. Because of the may in there, I mean, I guess it really depends on what you get into.
And is the big thing that we want to stay away from is their performance evaluation? To me, that's the big thing that we want to stay away from. But as far as them sharing a success in their classroom or a new innovation or a new idea that maybe could help improve teaching practice or something in the district,
Well,
I think that would
if
be.
if you put the evaluation in there, you're making it far more restrictive. I mean, a person could start talking about job duties and performance of job duties and responsibility and still be inappropriate. And I guess the evaluation is maybe too restrictive, in my mind. Also, not to put a wrench in this thing, I don't think that we're supposed to say failure there. I think we're saying doing so may result in employee discipline. Failure fits with the first one, but not with this one. Look, read that through once.
Yeah, I see.
Just in letter C,
Yeah,
doing so may result?
well, I'm thinking so.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Failure to have those conversations that we're just debating right now would,
Got it?
would be, that's what we're asking for.
Yeah,
So I think we have to fix that. But
I think my thing is that section A and section C don't seem to be consistent for me. It's just me. Section A talks about evaluation and
I don't think section C would put a damper on a teacher coming up to you and saying, I have a great new idea. I don't interpret it that way, or am I interpreting it incorrectly?
I guess
might add-
what was the reason?
Then let's
then that
talk
we-
about it.
What was the reason we put it in section A then?
I think you wanted it in.
Right.
Didn't you want it in?
Yeah. I mean, but
But maybe it shouldn't be in.
I think it should be, but I mean, to me, it's inconsistent with what's in section C then.
I think the thing that I might add to the conversation around section C is it does talk about social interaction, and that social interaction could be in passing in the hallway, could be walking your dogs out on the street. It also could be at one of the local bars after 4, 5, 6 drinks. And what we wouldn't want to have happen, and out of protection for the employee or protection for the board member, would be a conversation that was somehow influenced by other manners. And that's the social piece of this, which stands aside from staff communication to the board. If I were the staff member who had a concern about my performance, so let's use performance evaluation specifically, and I were to email an individual board member to say, I want to speak with you about,
That's
then
A.
that is A. C is we're over at a restaurant and we're out to dinner and we come across each other socially. We wouldn't want that conversation to go down the road, and that's where the emphasis on the word may is, because that may be inappropriate. Where staff member comes up, it may not be inappropriate. We don't want to limit it, but we do want to put some control around it. And the word may gives the administration the authority to do something if it happens. It also gives the board member the authority to say, hold on a second here, there's a policy that says we shouldn't be discussing this.
Yeah.
You need to go talk to your principal, you need to talk to human resources, you need to speak with the superintendent.
So it's okay for a staff member to talk to me about their new reading program?
Correct. I don't think that there would be anybody who would cause
I
any.
just don't want to limit, I just don't want it to be.
And that's
that
what the
You
term-
can't even walk out the door and you have to look the other way every time a staff
That's what
member
the
comes
term,
to you. That,
the term may does, and I think that we have several well-established functions that occur in the district that provide a good forum where veteran staff and new staff have that opportunity to have that interaction. I think that that's encouraged. We just wouldn't want to have a situation that could occur where there would be a line that would be crossed, and then nobody has any protections in that situation.
and then I would assume through administrative guidelines, maybe it'll clarify this even more.
Administrative guidelines will help clarify.
Yeah, that's good.
Any policy that
So maybe we can look
on.
at that and go
put
from there.
put some descriptors in there, yes.
So your example, Greg, of, the teacher that has a great idea, to me, fits the first sentence in C. Both staff and board members share a keen interest in the schools and in the education, and in education generally. And it is also expected that when they meet at social affairs and other functions, they will informally discuss such matters as educational trends, issues, innovations, and general activities. So I think we cover that actually pretty well there. That I think that some of the examples you gave
Right.
fit in that first
Right.
part. And
I'm fine with that as long as, I mean, I was just like, if you can't have any conversation with the staff.
yeah, I don't think that's the intention of
think so
this.
Okay.
And you're right, I don't want to squelch that.
As I read it, until tonight, I read it over a couple times.
It is tricky. This
Because
is
it first starts
tricky.
out that saying it's all pretty much okay, and then at the end it kind of restricts it, and I think as long as we're on the same page and when we get the administrative guidelines,
Okay,
we'll take it from there.
headlines, yeah. Anybody else, anything on this one?
So I understand the only change will be to that last sentence in
Word
section.
failure doesn't belong there. It's
Okay.
to do so would
I will make that
would
change,
be-
thank you.
possibly, yeah. Any other, the committee members, things that you're toying with or struggling with? Okay, Karen has some. Karen, hang on a minute, Karen. Amanda?
Going to policy 4112, section C, so the failure to
Yes.
do so should just be corrected as well.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, they're copy, yeah, they're, Now, Karen provided a number of things that she tripped on as going through them, which we appreciate your diligence on that, but next time, don't wait till the morning of the meeting, like today,
Oh, for the last 1,000?
yeah.
Okay.
But we uncovered some interesting things in there, and now, did you get your email of all the changes? Is there something that's still,
Just one out of whatever, however many you corrected. Thank you for that. Can you guys hear me
yeah,
okay? The lice, just looking for that one.
okay, the,
8450.
right. Oh, I'm on the wrong sheet, 8450 and 8451.
And I got the feedback, and it was very helpful, except, so it's page 105,
In 50?
8450, page 105. And talks about the removal of the district, removal of the students from the district property. Sorry, one second. Yes. So then I stated, then the kids with lice should be removed and can return when recovered, which is in C, the word recovered. It says preparation of standards for the readmission of students who have recovered from casual contact communicable diseases. But then, it was written in red that lice is not a communicable disease. But if you turn the page to page 205, lice is indicated there. The communicable diseases include, but are not limited to, the following, and it says lice. So I was like, well, maybe head lice is different than lice. So I did a lookup. There's body lice, pubic lice, and head lice.
Yes.
So, if you turn the page 2 more times to, sorry, 3 more times to, actually it's 8451. It's the page 1 of 1. It actually just references pediculosis. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yep.
Head lice. So, if pediculosis, so I looked up pediculosis, and it just states that as regular lice. So what is lice referring to in that column on page 205?
Lice, the response that was sent in an email, it should have been clarified further that we do have a policy specific to lice, and we do have administrative guidelines that get drafted after the head lice, and those guidelines are based off of what's recommended by the Department of Health, the Department of Public Instruction, and I think it's the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is what our current guidelines for dealing with head lice are based off of. So I apologize that the response in an email was just, it's treated, it's communicable, but it's also specifically addressed under its own policy, which is policy 8451.
Okay,
But Karen, this is an interesting point then. I wonder if this list, it's on page 2 of 5 of 8450, if we should, excuse me, if we should delete the term lice from that, or at least refer to page 80, or is there another version of lice, I guess?
The language in 8450 is taken from statutes 252:19
Oh, we leave it alone then.
and 252:21. So it is linked
So that's
to the Wisconsin
language.
State statute. The head lice policy is something that districts have.
From DPI.
It's, yeah, we get our language from DPI and the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Department of Health as to how to treat that and what processes to follow.
so then on page 1 of 1, if we're just looking at head lice, on the last paragraph, it says, if a child in the district is found to have head lice, the child's parent will be contacted to have the child treated and to pick him or her up immediately. After treatment and upon returning to school, the child will be examined by the schoolhouse staff and principal. The district practices a policy of no live lice as a criteria for a return to school. This is great, but if the parent, at our other school, we had some parents that they couldn't be contacted, so the children were just in the office all day with the lice. And when children come in with, needing a Band-Aid or a headache, needing to lay down, and they're right there with that child with lice, that could be transmitted that way. So you're removing the child from the classroom to help maintain that lice, but now you have other kids coming in contact with them. So when I fill out my emergency contacts for school, I've got 3 people that I need to put down. Are these people being called?
In the, yes, they are, as a matter of practice. In policy, in 00 to 2000 book, and in our drafting sessions, we discussed this, and now that you mention it, I am double checking. In Neola policies and the definitions, parent refers to parent and guardian, grandparent, anybody who could be potentially responsible for the child. It's not listed in here, but we're gonna make sure that that's added. The health staff, which would be in the administrative guideline, will first try to attempt to contact the parent, and then we'll go down the list of emergency contacts to address the student. From time to time, students do not have anybody that answers the phone. Our next option is to call law enforcement if it's appropriate, but in a situation of head lice, we don't always contact law enforcement to pick a child up. A first grader who has lice, we don't necessarily want to send them home in the squad car, but we do have that option in other instances besides a head lice case.
What do we do in that case then?
We have to maintain the student until we can get a hold of the parent or a responsible guardian. Some situations, our social workers will help out and intervene. There's a social worker available to do so. But we do still have to turn that student over to an adult. And we were specific in all policies where it was the release of the student Two, we wanted to make sure that we were releasing to a responsible adult. I think we see in news, quite frequently that a student leaves school and doesn't return home. We want to make sure that we're turning those kids over to a responsible adult. There are times where our hands are tied, from head lice to student discipline. Sometimes our hands are tied.
Sometimes, and my heart goes out to the kids because that's just the worst feeling to know why you're in the office and then mom's not there to pick you up or whoever. But this has happened where it's the same family over and over, and they can't contact a parent or those emergency parents or contacts. So at what point do you say, at what point do you intervene, and what can you do at that point?
In situations of a repeated issue, we will reach out to the county, to the Department of Health Services, I believe, or Child Protective Services where it's appropriate. And we will contact the county for assistance if it's a repeated situation.
It is being documented and something is being followed up on. It's not that it's not being done, it just cannot be broadcast, and something eventually is going to happen to help,
Help the family?
or to help the school district or the secretary, the health room assistant, whoever's there, to not have it repeat.
Yeah, we do our best to reach out to the community supports. So we do reach out to the county quite frequently. There's staff members at all of our schools that are on a first name basis with their contact at Waukesha County to try to provide supports to families where these things do repeat. There are, from time to time, there are situations where, in spite of the county's efforts and the district's efforts, we're still working to try to help the student. We do have the no live lice policy. So specific to lice, if a student does come back to school and still has lice in their hair, those students are examined and then sent back to. We do attempt the process then of reaching out to the home to pick the child up.
As a parent, as other parents would notify me, sometimes you can get 3 to 4 pieces of paper sent home like this saying there's a case of lice found in the child's classroom, go through your child's head. But after weeks of getting these, we get phone calls that say what's being done. So it's nice to know that there's follow-up. I don't know, not many people watch these, so I don't know how to let people know that any further. Do we need to say if the parent cannot move their child, they will, or because that's covered in that other spot, we don't need to add to that?
We do reach out. So parent applying to everybody who is listed in Infinite Campus as a backup, that would cover those backups. If there's nobody else in Infinite Campus, I can speak to a conversation I had maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago where I was talking to one of our social workers in the district, and they were working with a family to get additional contacts listed in the event that the first 2 or 3 are not available. Do we have the best people? That's always part of the conversation if we are struggling to reach a parent or a guardian of a child. Again, there are some situations where we, in spite of our best efforts, in spite of county involvement, we're just not getting that connection. Particular to head lice, Glenn Norder and his team do extra cleanings of the classroom when that comes up. It's notified internally, who needs to know, and we do pay special attention to those classrooms. However, from time to time, kids share hats or whatever it is, and stuff does get passed.
Anything else?
No, I just want to tell you, Bill, from 0 to 8,000, I did have a while ago. It seemed like I gave it all to you this morning, but I only gave you 1,000 last night, and it was. So just want to make that clear for all of our viewers.
Well, we do appreciate the work you put into it, because it's,
Well,
and,
that's
and
all you guys.
we made a lot of corrections based on your suggestions. I mean, some of it was grammatical, some of it was punctual, well, I guess it is grammar.
I'm no Ellen, but she would have been grammar this
Oh,
whole thing,
we
right?
would be on series 2.
All the corners would be bent if it was Ellen. Well, thank you. Thank you for hearing me and for,
Thank you, and thank you for catching a lot of other little strange little things along the way, and,
oh, one last thing. It said the board members with the age 62 and older, or board members can come to events free of charge.
it's called the Golden Pass, and I don't know who you get it from. Do you, Lynn? The Golden Pass? Retired people
I
and,
think they can meet with Sue, Sue Ettinger here in the
Sue Ettinger. Might
superintendent's
talk to Sue.
office as a start.
So it's any board member or just retired board members.
Retired board member.
I thought it was any board member, but I don't know. I never bothered to pursue it.
It says board members, but it doesn't say senior citizen board members.
We'll confirm that with you, one way or another, after the convention.
Okay.
Guess I won't see Sue until then.
You know, Sue, maybe one day she could make or bake an item and we all have golden tickets when we open up our brownie.
Thanks, Karen.
Creative. Thank you.
Good one.
Well, if I may add, just
Yeah.
one thing, I'd like to draw the committee attention just to policy 8120 and.
Which one?
8120, this is where the wording was pretty jumbled up in there. And I
yeah.
just want to let everybody know that should you be perusing these policy books for a little light reading, Karen did notice that there was some sentence structure issues with the wording on page 2 of 2. And so, just so the committee is clear, the revised, I shouldn't even say, use the term revised, the corrected language for it will read as follows: if the background check reveals a conviction or pending charges, or if the individual has been convicted of a felony, or if the circumstances of the conviction or pending charges substantially relate to the duties of the volunteer position, then the individual may be disqualified from volunteering in the district. As Karen discovered, and Bill and I probably looked at it for 10 minutes to try to find a way to word it.
It's supposed to be.
I'm not exactly sure what happened, but the way that it was written in the draft book that you have, it just seemed like the oars were a little jumbled up, so we clarified that this morning. And I would like to thank Karen from the administrative perspective. I'm not sure how she caught everything that she caught. She did catch a lot, and I do appreciate that, because as often as presented, we have multiple eyes take a look at whatever is presented to the board. These books and these series, these almost 400 policies have been looked at by administrators, administrative assistants, our committee and board members. They are looked at by Neola. They're going to be looked at again by Lynn as she goes through and does the quick spelling and grammar check of all of the policies. I think the one guarantee that I could make to you is that there will be additional errors in there. I would also say that in looking back and doing the drafting work, the policy book that we currently have had a few errors in it. So as we go forward, one of the things that I'll just highlight to the committee is, if you do notice a spelling error, a grammar error, a punctuation error, whatever it might be, we don't have to bring that policy back for revision and approval. Lynn has the authority, the ability, and as a district, we can go back in there and add a comma, add a colon. We just can't substantially change, the meaning of a policy, but we can put that clarification in there. So if you are doing a little light reading and you discover something, please send me and Lynn an email, and we'll make sure that it's corrected.
And in all honesty, there's still an open opportunity for more errors to get in there, because what Lynn puts together, and it will be transcribed over to Neola, if I got it straight, and they will then correct everything and put it into the final draft. Who's to say they don't make a typo in the process?
Correct.
And
We
I
are
think,
doing our best.
I'd say that the other guarantee, and Lynn just got a packet from Neola of their recommended spring policy changes. So after the book is approved.
Yeah, after, thank you.
After the book is approved, we do have, as a policy committee, a stack of policies and legal updates to review and consider as we begin going into the summer months. So I think that
Still
there
have
were
a
some.
job.
We still have a job. There were some questions about what will be the function of the committee after we go down the road of Neola. Well, it's already sitting up on Lynn's desk.
Might even be more, because we'll have more policies than we've ever had. Okay, other things in here that need addressing, and I think we've talked about, wait a minute, I lost my place here, the procedures and the fact that Lynn is, Joe just mentioned, Lynn is gonna do another cleaning as she goes through getting everything typed up to go to Neola. That's the way it goes, right? She types it up. All of, any policy we've touched, she will be going over and that all gets cataloged, so it goes back to Neola so they can put it in the big packet.
Sure. Lynn has, everything that's been done is in a Word file. If you remember us talking about the virtual protected network, the VPN, she's got it in a Word document in there. And as we have made changes and adjustments, Lynn has gone in there and updated those policies, and she's actually had a few of them open tonight just to clarify the language that was discussed in 3112 and 4112. All of that is going in. Lynn is going to be contacting after this meeting Richard from Neola to talk about one of the things that I want to make sure happens. Every district that approves Neola policy and makes this shift, there's a little bit of a lag between when it's approved and when it becomes online. We want to minimize that lag as much as possible, make that the shortest amount of time. I assure you as a committee and anybody else that if we were ever talked, we will have a policy book once this is approved, and if somebody were to question a policy, we would have access to the policy that the board approved. It's just not going to be out on the district webpage immediately, and so I want everybody to know that. The other part of that is the administrative guidelines, which Bill mentioned earlier. We will develop the administrative guidelines after the policies are written. Those guidelines then will be on the website, cross-referenced with the policies, so you can click on the hyperlink and go back and forth. As part of the guideline process, we're going to talk about associated forms. So if there is an acceptable use form that families need to sign off on, or if there's a form for one of the unique things to Waukesha is our interdistrict school choice. School choice forms can be linked directly in there. We can link it all right to the book, and so parents will see the policy, they'll see how the administrators need to operate, and they'll have those forms clicked right there. So we do have, functionality-wise, we do have a number of efficiencies that we're building in for families and for administrators. It's going to take several months for us to get to that.
Yeah. Optimistically, we'll approve this on February 8th. February 9th, those policies will be in effect.
Right.
You and I talked about that earlier. Have we forewarned staff that could happen, or are we going to forewarn staff somehow that the policy, the entire policy library is up for change potentially on February 9th?
I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch.
No, I know, that's a risky thing to even say on the air, I suppose.
So I'm going to have, where policy really, policy addresses how we all operate in the district, but those people who are most closely touched are our administrators, some of our administrative assistants. Those people going into the February meeting will be given an update that the board may approve these new policies at that time. If the board does that, then in essence, we're going to flip the switch and turn off every access to our old policy. We'll still have that as part of our history should we need it, but it's not going to be how we're operating. So the new policies. So thinking of discipline.
Stop you for a minute, please. You said that's not how we are. That will not be any longer how we are operating. The fact is, for the most part, because we haven't substantially change any of our existing policies. Right. So for the most part, we will continue to operate similarly to the way we have been operating.
Absolutely.
With some additions.
Right, and some clarification. So I can think, the policy around harassment, we had some lengthy discussion around, it wasn't even discussion, it was just more clarification. It's about a 20-page policy that the Office of Civil Rights drafted with the Neola attorneys to make sure we cover all areas of harassment and non-discrimination. Chris Hedstrom and I are listed in that as the investigators of any issues. Those will be things that are different from how it's currently spelled out in policy.
Right.
And those will be things that we need to draw the attention of our administration on. Should these things come up, these people could be directed to. in situations of major discipline, we've operated off of policy 5130G, our guidelines around student discipline. That is what's framed the pre-expulsion process. That's kind of given our administrators some guidelines on the tiers of how to address discipline. We don't want administrators any longer referencing 5130G. We want them to be able to go to the policy that spells out how we're going to operate. The language is still the same, but when you start getting into areas where people can catch you on a technicality, we want to make sure that we're
Yes.
providing direction to those people that are going to use it. And that's what I mean when we say we're not necessarily not how we're operating, it's just not what we're going to reference. And we'll help people understand where to go for the policies. My hope is that after the meeting tonight, if the committee is comfortable with what's here and is recommending that this go onto the board, again, we have that pathway towards approval. You know, we've done our due diligence on the policies. You know, if the board approves, Lynn can begin that conversation earlier with, if the committee approves, Lynn can begin that conversation with Richard Zimmern about how to minimize that void between what we currently have posted online and what we need to have linked online. And I would say that the language in the Neola policies and the language in the Waukesha policies did meld pretty well together. Neola does have a first draft of everything that we did, so we haven't addressed too much. I mean, outside of some spelling and grammar changes, so they're not gonna have to go in and rewrite this policy. They're just gonna have to update what that language says. So we're not talking about complete rewrites of policy, which was what sometimes they face.
Joe?
So do we have one final approval of all of them? Is that
What we
the
would be
intent
doing
here?
tonight, I think the way we want to approach this tonight is to have a committee vote agree that we are now presenting this. We've presented it once, presented half of it and half of it, so those first readings are done. February 8th, we would like to come back and say that we have reviewed it for the second reading, and we are now presenting it as a bundle for approval. So that's what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, so I'd make a motion to approve Neola Policy Series 0000 through 9000 as amended per our discussion and emails.
Yes, second.
I saw a second coming out of Amanda. Is that okay with everybody?
That's good.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? 4-0, Lynn. Would you rather did a roll call? That's usually what we. Stacy hates it when we do it that way. Anything else on other business recommendations for future committee meetings or other things as needed?
As we've mentioned the past couple of months, the guidelines, due to the money that's allocated towards it, I'm going to talk to Darren Clark about the F&F committee. That's where the original financial allocation was made towards the policies. I do, I can't speak for the committee, but it does seem like the natural next step. So I was going to approach F&F because of the financial piece and the fact that it's going to be built in as a budget piece for us in the foreseeable future with the annual fees associated with the updates and the hosting. So just to make sure that the F&F committee is abreast of the financial piece towards guidelines.
Yeah, I think I know F&F is familiar with the two components, and I think it was just more of a technicality of saying, hey, let's just approve that second part, just in case we don't need it. So, I mean, I think based on our discussion, we're saying we need it. So I think we want to actually forward that piece of information then to F&F saying that, this committee's saying, we're comfortable with the first fee, obviously we paid that already, and that we need this for the guidelines.
We
So,
could,
I mean, if we,
would not meet again prior to the F&F meeting would be probably February 6th. But I think we can't vote and send a vote along with, but we could sure say that there was a lot of agreement among the policy committee that we proceed quickly with the administrative guidelines section of our program, a project.
And the intent, I think, in F and F was that we were gonna do both. I mean,
And,
it
yeah, I
was
know the
really.
intent was, so,
Yeah.
but we are now confident we need to do both. I mean, that's what, we had 2 or 3 of our guidelines right here tonight, or excuse me, of our policies right here tonight that have an underlying need for a guideline,
Right.
so that's good.
I think the thing that I'd add, just so the board is clear and the committee is clear, and Lynn can put this in the notes, that we have, as part of our drafting process, and for those crucial policies that had a guideline in our current book, we built those guidelines into what you have here, into the policy. There are some policies where we're gonna have to establish some guidelines for, but the discipline policy, for instance, has the guidelines attached to it, so. Just to
That's,
draw everybody's
that's
attention
fair,
there,
yeah.
we're not gonna be, standing there with, our hands in the air saying we don't know how to operate. We did intentionally put that in as part of policy.
talked about that from the get-go. Anything else that needs to be brought up at a future meeting under item number 4 here? Not, believe it or not. Do you have anything?
Just gonna say, if we can forecast out to March, my wife is due March 14th, so
That's a week after the next, oh, no, that would be the week of our next policy meeting. 'cause
policy meeting, so
It's
I.
14th, March will look like, yeah, okay.
I
So
may
what do you
be,
want to do about that?
I may be asking for permission to be absent, Bill, or in February, taking a look around, when we could
We meet at the
reschedule the
hospital?
meeting.
Where are your priorities?
I could Skype in, similar to what the young man did for me at Chief. I don't know if I'd have the full
we-
support from my wife for that, though.
We will be tolerant. Yeah, the 14th is, it would be the night of the
I think it could be, yes.
policy meeting. Huh? We put it off a whole week after, because the board is meeting on the 8th. Oh, go by the
Tuesday
3rd.
of February is the 21st.
Okay, that's why it's counting out
Yes,
that way.
so
Oh, you'll
the-
be back at work by then.
March 21st.
Okay, Joe. Thank you
I
for
can
sharing
come in
that,
and
and we all give you good, and your wife good wishes, so.
Thank you.
Thanks again for all your hard work on all this. I mean,
Thank you. It's been a very, fun journey, I would say, as you go through and take a look at, you can, if you look at the policy, I'm still pretty new in Waukesha, 2.5 years here. I've had the benefit of working with some staff members who have been here for 30+ years. You can kind of have a policy review and pair that with the conversations you've had and get a pretty good idea of the history of what's gone on. I mean, this stuff gives some support to what the initiatives were at the time, what some of the challenges were at the time, and it's been very informing for me. And then the other part of it is with the number of new principals that we have, it's been a really good opportunity for us to bring principals into the conversations. They've valued it too, even some of those longer work days in the summer. In this room here, being part of those conversations kind of gave them the why between, how we do stuff, so.
Good, that's,
And as Greg and Amanda are new board members, I remember it took me a number of years to get this far through the policy. We used to just look at, we just kind of went in rotation. And so we crammed into just this year, it's 8 months or whatever, everything. I think when I first joined the board, I think it took 3 or 4 years to get
Probably
through
did.
all the series. So although this is a lot of work, I mean, that was really excellent exposure for you guys through all of it in a short period of time. So there's, I think, some nice benefit.
you're smarter than the average newbie.
Hey, that's right. That's right. You summed it up well, Bill.
Is that it?
good.
All right, well, thank you, and that will say meeting is adjourned.